So this button, which is called add button, I want to have some function called when I click on it, right? So how could I do that? So I'm a new student, and I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before, right? So how could I figure out in Android, how do I set a listener for a button? What might I do as a new student who's just trying to figure this out? Yeah, Google, why not? Let's see what Google says. Okay. How to set a button listener Android. Now, one word of caution I'll tell you, okay, is, oh, by the way, for some reason, even though it's a touch screen, the listener is called Onclick, okay? So here I have button.onsetClickListener and so on. So one word of caution. Android changes constantly, and Kotlin is also new, and so there's lots of new ways to do stuff and preferred ways to do stuff, okay? So like a lot of the resources I gave you, like there's lynda.com, there's raywenderlich.com tutorials, there's the Android Apprentice book. They have a way of referring to things that are in your layout, a function called setViewById. If you see setViewById, don't use it, okay? So it looks like this. SetViewById. Okay, do not use this. This is very common. You'll see it all over the place. When you Google, you'll find this everywhere, okay? So what that does is it says, refer to the thing in my layout by an ID, okay? And this is like an archaic way of doing things. So like, don't use that because it's very error prone, okay? And it's a big source of bugs in Android. So just try not to use that. So I'll show you another way to do it, okay? But anyway, let's go back to Google, Professor Google, and how do we set, so here's button 1, set Onclicklistener, and then something. And then here you see, oh, find view by ID, and then r.id that button 1, okay? So when you see this, don't use this, okay? I'm telling you, make a note. Don't use find view by ID. This will cause you problems. Here's again, find view by ID. But we know that there's something called set Onclicklistener, okay? And then you have Onclicklistener. And then even the way you set Onclicklisteners has changed. There's easier and easier ways to do this as time goes on. So let's see if we can figure out the most modern way to do this or not. Okay? If not, I'll tell you later. So when my activity gets created, let me set a listener on that button. What's the button's name? I don't remember. Let's look. It's add button. Okay? I'll just copy it in case I need. Okay? So I'm going to say for this button, which is add button, so I'm going to start typing add button. Now, notice as I start typing, it says, oh, did you mean add button from activity underscore main XML? Is that the button you meant? Yeah, that's what I meant. So I'm going to hit enter or return. And then it says set content view, or it says add button. So notice when I hit enter, it did an import for me. Kotlin X, Android synthetic main activity main dot star. Okay, this is super important. Make a note of this one. Okay, and you don't have to type it. You can do what I just did, right? I typed in the name of my button. I took the autocomplete, and it added the import for me. Okay, so this is this thing called Kotlin X, and then the rest of it. This is something called Android Kotlin extensions. Okay. So this is a cool feature that you only have access to if you program in Kotlin. So if you're a Java programmer, going back old school, you don't have access to any of this. And the way you talk to your stuff in your ID is really complex and cumbersome, okay? But with Kotlin, they put a lot of stuff under the hood for you, so you can just use shortcuts, and they have all these like extensions that you can use. So when you're doing Android development, Kotlin is especially advantageous, okay? So if you're doing stuff where you'd normally be doing Java and you use Kotlin, there's an advantage because it's simpler, it's more concise, and all those other reasons I mentioned earlier. But if you're doing Android development specifically, it's even more advantageous because in Android, they've done a lot of stuff for you that you don't have access to if you're going to do it in Java. So what does that tell you about what should you use if you're going to be doing Android development, Java or Kotlin? It's pretty obvious, right? So make sure, if anyone tells you, oh, we want to use Java, like this is a really good reason why not to, okay? You're adding more work for no reason. When you do that, you're making things more complicated for no reason. And when you do that, you're potentially introducing more bugs or giving the chance for more bugs to come up. And there's no reason for that, right? Okay, so I typed in the name of my button, I got the import. Now what was I going to do? I want to set a listener. So I'm going to type a dot. Remember last week I said the way you access properties or methods of something is using this dot notation. So I hit the dot, the period, and then I give a whole list of stuff. And I don't want to scroll through all that. I know I want something called set Onclicklistener. I'm going to start typing it, set, and that list becomes smaller. Now I want to set click listener or on-click listener. I don't know. So let's try click. I don't know. Let me go back and do dot click and see if that gives me something. CLIK. So notice I get stuff that doesn't start with click. It has click in the name somewhere. This is a really cool feature of Android Studio. I'm not sure we even have this in Xcode, okay? So it's not just stuff that starts with click, but if it has click in it somewhere, then it comes up in my autocomplete list, okay? So if I look down the list, which is much smaller now, I see set on click listener, okay? And then I have two different ones I can choose from, actually three. Set on context, no, actually I have two. Set on click listener and then something, and then set on click listener and something. So let me choose the first one, see what happens. Okay, so I get a red line, and it says it's expecting a view, okay? And then define an Android widget button and on-click listener. So let me go back and type it again with the autocomplete. So now I know, okay, do I want this one or this one? Okay, so the second one, it gave me open and close braces. So what is the difference here? What do you think I'm supposed to put in here? What starts with open and close braces? Yeah.
Functions.
A function. So this is a lambda or an unnamed function. I could just start typing my code here, do some code,